As the plane climbed higher, the flight attendant returned to Stephanie's seat, her expression a mix of concern and apprehension. "Ma'am, I've spoken with the captain, and we've come up with a solution," the attendant said, her voice slightly more confident than before. "We'd like to offer you an upgrade to the private jet section of the plane. It's a smaller, more exclusive cabin, and we believe it would provide you with the level of comfort and service you're accustomed to." Stephanie regarded the attendant with a calm but skeptical expression. "And what about the other first-class passengers? Are they being offered the same upgrade?" The attendant hesitated, her gaze shifting nervously. "Well, no, ma'am. The private jet upgrade is only being offered to you." Stephanie felt her brow furrow as she processed the attendant's words. "So, let me get this straight. You're asking me, a first-class passenger, to voluntarily move to a different, more exclusive cabin, while the other passengers in this cabin are allowed to remain in their seats." The attendant nodded, her expression apologetic. "Yes, ma'am. We believe this is the best solution, given the circumstances." Stephanie shook her head, her lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm sorry, but I'm not going to accept your offer. I've already made it clear that I have no intention of moving from this seat, and I stand by that decision." The attendant's eyes widened, and she opened her mouth to speak, but Stephanie raised a hand to stop her. "Furthermore, I want to make it clear that I believe this request is being made due to my race and my status as a black woman," Stephanie said, her voice firm and unwavering. "I've experienced this kind of treatment before, and I'm not going to stand for it. If you have a legitimate, non-discriminatory reason for asking me to move, then I'm willing to listen. But if this is simply a case of you singling me out because of the color of my skin, then I'm going to take this matter up with the airline's management and the authorities." The attendant's face fell, and she seemed to shrink under the weight of Stephanie's words. "Ma'am, I can assure you that this has nothing to do with your race or your status. We're simply trying to accommodate all of our passengers to the best of our ability." Stephanie leaned back in her seat, her arms folded across her chest. "I'm sorry, but I'm not convinced. If this were truly about accommodating all of our passengers, then you would be asking the other first-class passengers to volunteer as well. Instead, you're singling me out, and I won't stand for it." The attendant opened her mouth to respond, but Stephanie cut her off. "I want to speak to the captain. Now." The attendant hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Of course, ma'am. I'll let the captain know you'd like to speak with him." As the attendant hurried away, Stephanie felt a sense of resolve wash over her. She was determined to get to the bottom of this situation and ensure that no one else would be subjected to the kind of treatment she had experienced. She knew that her actions could have far-reaching consequences, both for the airline and for the industry as a whole, but she was more than ready to take on the challenge. As the plane continued its journey, Stephanie's mind raced with thoughts of how she might approach the conversation with the captain. She knew that she would need to be firm, but also diplomatic, in order to get her message across and effect meaningful change. She was determined to use her platform and her influence to create a more inclusive and equitable environment for all passengers, regardless of their race, gender, or social status, but to any passenger who deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. As the plane's engines roared to life, the flight attendant returned to Stephanie's seat, her expression a mixture of concern and uncertainty. She hesitated for a moment, clearly unsure of how to proceed. "Ma'am," the attendant began, her voice slightly more subdued than before. "I understand your position, and I apologize for the inconvenience. However, we really do have a situation with the passenger manifest, and we need to find a solution." Stephanie regarded the attendant with a calm but unwavering gaze. "I'm sorry, but as I mentioned, I'm a loyal and frequent flyer with this airline. I've never been asked to downgrade my seat before, and I don't appreciate being singled out in this manner." The attendant nodded, her expression a mix of understanding and discomfort. "I understand your concerns, ma'am, and I can assure you that this request has nothing to do with your status or your race. It's simply a matter of logistics and ensuring that all of our passengers are accommodated." Stephanie couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at the attendant's response. She had heard similar explanations before, and she knew all too well how often they were used to mask deeper issues of discrimination and bias. "If this truly has nothing to do with my race or my status as a passenger," Stephanie said, her voice measured but firm, "then why am I the one being asked to move, while the other first-class passengers remain in their seats?" The attendant paused, her gaze shifting nervously between Stephanie and the other passengers in the cabin. Ma'am, I can assure you that this is not a personal matter. We simply have a few more passengers than we anticipated, and we're trying to find the best solution for everyone. Stephanie shook her head, her expression hardening. I'm sorry, but I'm not convinced. If this were truly about logistics, then you would be asking all of the first-class passengers to volunteer, not just me. I've been in this situation before, and I know what it feels like to be singled out and treated differently because of the color of my skin. The attendant's shoulders slumped, and she let out a deep sigh. You're right, ma'am. I apologize for the way this situation has been handled. Let me speak to the captain and see if we can find another solution. With that, the attendant hurried away, leaving Stephanie alone with her thoughts. She couldn't help but feel a sense of frustration and disappointment. Despite her success and her status as a valued customer, she was still being made to feel like an outsider, like someone who didn't belong in the first-class cabin. As the plane taxied down the runway, Stephanie glanced out the window, watching the ground disappear beneath them. She couldn't help but wonder how many other passengers had experienced similar treatment, and how often these incidents went unnoticed or unaddressed. Stephanie knew that she couldn't let this situation slide. As a leader in her industry and a major investor in the airline, she had a responsibility to speak up and demand change. She had worked too hard to build her career and her wealth to be treated like a second-class citizen, and she was determined to ensure that no one else would have to go through what she was experiencing. As the plane climbed higher, Stephanie's mind raced with thoughts of how she might address this situation. She would need to speak to the captain, the airline's management, and perhaps even the media, if necessary, to ensure that this incident was not swept under the rug. She was determined to use her influence and her platform to drive meaningful change, to create a more inclusive and equitable environment for all passengers, regardless of their race, gender, or social status. With a deep breath, Stephanie settled back into her seat, her eyes fixed on the horizon as the plane soared through the clear blue sky. She knew that the journey ahead would not be an easy one, but she was more than ready to take it on. It was a bright and sunny morning as Stephanie Wilson made her way through the bustling airport terminal. As one of the airline's most loyal and frequent flyers, she was no stranger to the familiar sights and sounds of air travel. Today, however, she felt a sense of excitement and anticipation as she approached the first-class check-in counter. Stephanie was a successful businesswoman who had built an impressive career in the tech industry. Over the years, she had become a major investor in the airline, contributing significantly to its growth and success. As she handed over her boarding pass, the agent at the counter greeted her warmly, recognizing her as a valued customer. "Good morning, Ms. Wilson," the agent said with a smile. "It's wonderful to see you again. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to make your flight more comfortable." "Good morning," Stephanie replied, returning the friendly gesture. "I'm looking forward to a smooth and enjoyable journey today." After a brief exchange, Stephanie made her way to the first-class lounge, where she was greeted by the familiar sights and sounds of the premium cabin. She settled into a plush leather chair, sipping on a refreshing beverage as she reviewed some important documents on her tablet. The lounge was abuzz with activity, as other well-dressed passengers moved about, discussing business deals and catching up with colleagues. As the boarding announcement echoed through the lounge, Stephanie gathered her belongings and joined the queue of first-class passengers. She took her time, savoring the moment as she made her way down the jetway and onto the plane. The flight attendants stationed at the entrance greeted her warmly, ushering her toward her assigned seat. Stephanie carefully stowed her carry-on luggage in the overhead compartment and settled into her spacious, leather-upholstered seat. She took a deep breath, feeling a sense of comfort and familiarity as she prepared for the journey ahead. The first-class cabin was sparsely populated, with only a handful of other passengers occupying the luxurious seats. Just as Stephanie was about to immerse herself in the in-flight entertainment system, a flight attendant approached her with a polite smile. "Good morning, ma'am," the attendant said, her voice soft and professional. "I'm afraid there's been a slight issue with the passenger manifest, and we have a few more first-class passengers than we anticipated. Would you be willing to move to an economy seat for this flight?" Stephanie's brow furrowed as she processed the request. She was a loyal and frequent flyer with the airline, and she had come to expect a certain level of service and comfort when traveling in the premium cabin. The idea of being asked to downgrade to economy class was not only surprising, but also potentially demeaning. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand," Stephanie said, her tone reserved but firm. "I booked a first-class ticket, and I was looking forward to enjoying the amenities of this cabin. Is there a problem with my reservation?" The flight attendant hesitated, sensing the subtle tension in Stephanie's response. "No, ma'am, there's no issue with your reservation. We simply have a few more passengers than we anticipated, and we're asking some of our first-class customers to voluntarily move to the economy section for this flight." Stephanie's eyes narrowed as she studied the attendant's expression. She couldn't help but wonder if there was more to this request than the attendant was letting on. Was she being singled out due to her race? As a successful black woman, Stephanie had encountered her fair share of subtle and overt discrimination throughout her life, and she was not about to let this incident slide. "I'm afraid I can't accommodate your request," Stephanie said, her voice unwavering. "I'm a loyal and frequent flyer with this airline, and I've come to expect a certain level of service and comfort when traveling in the first-class cabin. I have no intention of moving to the economy section." The flight attendant's eyes widened, and she paused for a moment, seemingly caught off guard by Stephanie's firm response. "I understand, ma'am," she said, her tone slightly more conciliatory. "Let me see if we can find another solution." With that, the attendant hurried away, leaving Stephanie to ponder the situation. As she watched the attendant confer with her colleagues, Stephanie couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. She had encountered this type of scenario before, where her race and social status had been used to make assumptions about her place in the world. But this time, she was determined to stand her ground and demand the respect and treatment she deserved as a valued customer and investor in the airline. As the plane began to prepare for takeoff, Stephanie settled back into her seat, her mind racing with thoughts of how she might address this situation and ensure that it didn't happen again. As Stephanie waited patiently for the captain to arrive, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. She knew that she was making a bold stand, but she also understood the potential consequences of her actions. The airline industry was notoriously resistant to change, and she was well aware of the power dynamics at play. After a few moments, the captain, a seasoned and well-respected pilot, approached Stephanie's seat. He greeted her with a warm smile, his expression conveying a genuine sense of concern. "Good morning, Miss Wilson," the captain said, his voice calm and measured. "I understand there's been a bit of a situation. The flight attendant informed me that you've been asked to move to a different seat, and you declined. I'd like to understand your perspective and see if we can find a resolution." Stephanie nodded, her gaze steady and unwavering. "Good morning, Captain. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me about this. As I've made clear to the flight attendant, I have no intention of moving from this seat. I'm a loyal and frequent flyer with this airline, and I've never been asked to downgrade my seat in this manner before." The captain listened intently, his brow furrowed in contemplation. "I see. Could you help me understand why you feel this way? Is there a specific reason you're opposed to the request?" Stephanie took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Captain, I believe this request is being made due to my race and my status as a black woman. I've experienced this kind of treatment before, where I've been singled out and asked to make accommodations that other passengers are not being asked to make." The captain's expression shifted, and he nodded slowly. "I understand your concerns, Ms. Wilson. Let me assure you that this is not a matter of discrimination or bias. We simply have a situation where we have more first-class passengers than we anticipated, and we're trying to find the best solution for everyone." Stephanie shook her head, her lips pressed into a thin line. "With all due respect, Captain, I'm not convinced. If this were truly about accommodating all of our passengers, then you would be asking the other first-class passengers to volunteer as well. Instead, I'm the only one being singled out, and that's simply unacceptable." The captain's expression shifted, and he seemed to hesitate for a moment. "Miss Wilson, I'm afraid there's something I need to share with you that may shed some light on this situation." Stephanie raised an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. "Go on, Captain." The captain cleared his throat, his gaze meeting Stephanie's with a newfound sense of gravity. "Ms. Wilson, I'm afraid you're one of the airline's largest individual investors. Our records show that you hold a significant number of shares in the company, and we consider you to be a highly valued customer and partner." Stephanie's eyes widened, and she felt a sudden rush of adrenaline coursing through her veins. I'm sorry, but I don't understand. If I'm such a valued customer and investor, then why was I being asked to move to the economy section? The captain's expression shifted to one of genuine remorse. Ms. Wilson, I can assure you that this request had nothing to do with your race or your status as a customer. The flight attendant who approached you was simply unaware of your importance to the company. As soon as I was made aware of the situation, I knew we needed to find a better solution. Stephanie felt a mix of emotions wash over her: relief, anger, and a sense of vindication. She had known all along that there was more to this story, and she was determined to get to the bottom of it. Captain, I appreciate your honesty, but I have to say that I'm deeply troubled by the way this situation was handled. Stephanie said, her voice firm but measured. I'm not just a customer. I'm one of your most significant investors, and I expect to be treated with the utmost respect and care. The captain nodded, his expression contrite. You're absolutely right, Ms. Wilson. This incident is unacceptable, and I can assure you that we will be taking immediate steps to address the issue and ensure that it never happens again. Please, let me make it up to you by offering you a private jet upgrade for the remainder of your journey. It's the least we can do to make this right. Stephanie considered the captain's offer, her mind racing with the implications of what had just transpired. She knew that this was an opportunity to effect real change, not just for herself, but for all passengers who had been subjected to similar treatment. Captain, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not going to accept it, Stephanie said, her voice unwavering. Instead, I'd like to have a meeting with the airline CEO and other senior executives to discuss this issue and what we can do to prevent it from happening again in the future. The captain nodded, his respect for Stephanie evident in his expression. Of course, Ms. Wilson, I'll make the necessary arrangements immediately. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. It's clear that we have more work to do to ensure that all of our passengers are treated with the respect and care they deserve. As the plane continued its ascent, Stephanie felt a mix of emotions swirling within her. She was relieved to have the situation resolved, but she was also deeply troubled by the implications of what had just occurred. The captain, clearly shaken by the revelation of Stephanie's status as a major investor, had been quick to offer her a private jet upgrade as a way to make amends. But Stephanie had no interest in taking the easy way out. She was determined to use this opportunity to drive meaningful change, not just for herself, but for all passengers who had been subjected to similar treatment. Thank you for the offer, Captain, but I'm afraid I can't accept it, Stephanie said, her voice calm and measured. Instead, I'd like to request a meeting with the airline CEO and other senior executives as soon as possible. I believe this incident has highlighted a deeper issue that needs to be addressed. The captain nodded, his expression one of understanding. Of course, Ms. Wilson, I'll make the necessary arrangements immediately. I can assure you that the airline takes this matter very seriously, and we're committed to finding a solution that ensures all of our passengers are treated with the respect and care they deserve. Stephanie was pleased to hear the captain's response, but she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. She knew that the airline industry was notoriously resistant to change, and she was well aware of the power dynamics at play. As a black woman, she had faced countless obstacles throughout her career, and she was determined not to let this incident be swept under the rug. As the plane reached cruising altitude, Stephanie glanced out the window, watching the world below unfold before her. She couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had led her to this moment, the hard-won battles she had fought, and the successes she had achieved. Stephanie had always been a trailblazer, pushing the boundaries of what was possible and challenging the status quo. She had built a successful career in the tech industry, becoming a respected leader and a driving force for innovation. And now, as a major investor in the airline, she had the opportunity to use her influence to drive real change. As the flight attendant approached her seat with a tray of refreshments, Stephanie couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that this incident was about more than just her own experience. It was about the countless other passengers who had been subjected to similar treatment, and she was determined to use her platform to ensure that no one else would have to go through what she had endured. When the flight attendant arrived, Stephanie offered her a warm smile, her expression conveying a sense of understanding and empathy. "Thank you for your assistance," she said, her voice measured and sincere. "I appreciate your efforts to find a solution, and I look forward to discussing this matter further with the airline's leadership." The flight attendant seemed taken aback by Stephanie's gracious response, and she nodded, her own expression softening. Of course, Ms. Wilson, I'll make sure the captain knows you're ready to speak with him and the other executives. As the flight attendant hurried away, Stephanie couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and determination. She knew that the road ahead would not be an easy one, but she was more than ready to take it on. She was determined to use her influence and her platform to drive real change, to create a more inclusive and equitable environment for all passengers, regardless of their race, gender, or social status. With a deep breath, Stephanie settled back into her seat, her gaze fixed on the horizon. She knew that this was just the beginning, and she was more than ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In the weeks following her meeting with the airline CEO, Stephanie remained steadfast in her commitment to driving meaningful change. She knew that the path ahead would not be an easy one, but she was more determined than ever to ensure that the incident she had experienced would not be repeated, not just for her, but for all passengers who had faced similar treatment. As part of the agreement reached during the meeting, Stephanie had been granted a seat on the airline's newly formed Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Board. This gave her a direct line of communication with the company's leadership, as well as the opportunity to help shape the policies and procedures that would govern the way the airline interacted with its customers. One of Stephanie's first orders of business was to oversee the implementation of a comprehensive unconscious bias training program for all of the airline's employees, from the frontline staff to the executive team. She recognized that this was not a simple fix, but rather a long-term investment in creating a more inclusive and equitable organization. Unconscious bias can manifest in subtle and insidious ways, Stephanie explained to the senior executives during one of the board's meetings. It's not enough to simply tell our employees to treat all passengers with respect. We need to give them the tools and the understanding to recognize their own biases and learn how to overcome them. The executives listened intently, nodding in agreement. They understood that the stakes were high and that the airline's reputation and long-term success hinged on their ability to address this issue head-on. As the training program rolled out across the organization, Stephanie kept a close eye on the results. She was determined to see tangible changes in the way the airline's employees interacted with passengers, and she was not afraid to hold the leadership accountable if progress was not made. Alongside the training program, Stephanie also championed the creation of a customer feedback system that prioritized addressing incidents of racial bias and discrimination. She knew that empowering passengers to speak up and share their experiences was a crucial step in driving real change. We need to create an environment where our customers feel heard and respected, Stephanie said. By making it easier for them to report incidents of bias or discrimination, we can identify patterns and take swift action to address them. The executives readily agreed, and within a few months, the new feedback system was in place. Stephanie was pleased to see that it was already yielding results, with several incidents being reported and addressed in a timely manner. As the months passed, Stephanie continued to work tirelessly with the Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Board, pushing the airline to expand its efforts beyond just the customer-facing side of the business. She recognized that true change would require a holistic approach, one that addressed diversity and inclusion at every level of the organization. The airline's efforts did not go unnoticed, and before long, Stephanie's story had become a source of inspiration for both passengers and industry leaders alike. She was hailed as a trailblazer, a force to be reckoned with, and a shining example of what could be achieved when someone with influence and determination stepped up to challenge the status quo. As Stephanie reflected on her journey, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. She knew that the road ahead would continue to be a challenging one, but she was more than ready to face whatever obstacles came her way. After all, she had proven that one person, armed with a strong sense of purpose and an unwavering commitment to change, could make a real and lasting difference. As the plane touched down at its destination, Stephanie quickly gathered her belongings and made her way to the exit. She could feel the weight of her encounter with the flight attendant and the captain still lingering on her mind, and she was eager to address the issue head-on. Upon disembarking, Stephanie was greeted by a team of airline representatives who ushered her to a private VIP lounge. She had been informed by the captain that the airline's CEO and other senior executives were waiting to speak with her, and she knew that this was her opportunity to make a real impact. As Stephanie entered the lounge, she was met with a somber group of executives, all of whom seemed to share a sense of unease and concern. The airline's CEO, a seasoned industry veteran, approached her with a grave expression. "Ms. Wilson, thank you for taking the time to meet with us," the CEO said, his voice laced with a hint of trepidation. "I want to apologize, on behalf of the entire airline, for the incident that occurred on your flight. It's clear that we have failed to uphold the standards of service and respect that we strive for, and we're committed to addressing this issue head-on." Stephanie nodded, her gaze unwavering. "Thank you, Mr. Callahan. I appreciate your willingness to meet with me and discuss this matter. As you can imagine, I'm deeply troubled by what happened, and I'm determined to ensure that it doesn't happen again, not just to me, but to any passenger who comes through your doors." The CDO nodded solemnly, his expression conveying a sense of genuine remorse. "You're absolutely right, Ms. Wilson. This incident has highlighted a deeper issue within our organization, and we're committed to taking immediate action to address it." Stephanie took a deep breath, her mind racing with the potential implications of this meeting. "Mr. Callahan, I want to make it clear that this is not just about me. This is about the countless other passengers, especially those from marginalized communities, who have likely experienced similar treatment at the hands of your employees. I'm not here to demand special treatment or compensation. I'm here to ensure that real, meaningful change is enacted." The CDO nodded, his expression shifting to one of determination. "You have my word, Ms. Wilson. We will be taking immediate steps to address this issue, starting with a comprehensive review of our customer service training and protocols. We will also be implementing new oversight mechanisms to ensure that incidents like this are swiftly identified and addressed." Stephanie felt a sense of relief wash over her, but she knew that the real work was just beginning. "I'm glad to hear that, Mr. Callahan. However, I want to make it clear that I will be closely monitoring the progress of these changes, and I expect to see tangible results within the next 6 months." The CDO nodded, his expression resolute. "Understood, Ms. Wilson. We will be providing you with regular updates on our progress, and we welcome your input and guidance as we work to create a more inclusive and equitable environment for all of our passengers." As the meeting came to a close, Stephanie couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. She knew that this was just the beginning of a long and challenging journey, but she was more than ready to take it on. She was determined to use her influence and her platform to drive real change, not just for herself, but for all those who had been subjected to similar treatment. As she made her way out of the VIP lounge, Stephanie couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that the road ahead would not be an easy one, but she was more than ready to face whatever challenges lay in her path. As the airline continued to implement and refine its diversity and inclusion initiatives, Stephanie's story began to inspire others to speak up and share their own experiences of discrimination and bias within the industry. One by one, influential Black passengers and industry leaders came forward, sharing tales of similar encounters that had left them feeling marginalized and disrespected. These stories served as a powerful reminder that Stephanie's experience was not an isolated incident, but rather a reflection of a deeper, systemic issue that had long plagued the airline industry. "When I heard about what happened to Stephanie, it was like reliving my own experience all over again," said Amara, a well-known travel influencer. "I've been in that same position, where I've been singled out and asked to make accommodations that no one else was being asked to make. It's demoralizing, and it's unacceptable." Amara's story, along with those of countless others, helped to shine a spotlight on the broader problem and galvanize support for the changes that Stephanie and the Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Board were championing. "Stephanie's courage and determination have been an inspiration to so many of us," said Derek, a frequent flyer and respected business leader. "She's not just fighting for herself, she's fighting for all of us who have had to endure this kind of treatment, and that's why her story resonates so deeply." As the public's attention turned to the airline's diversity and inclusion efforts, the company found itself under increasing scrutiny. Customers, investors, and industry watchdogs alike began to demand greater transparency and accountability, pushing the airline to go beyond surface-level reforms and address the deeper, more entrenched issues at play. Stephanie, ever the strategic thinker, recognized that this was a pivotal moment. She knew that the airline's response to this growing public pressure would be a true test of its commitment to real and lasting change. "This is our opportunity to show the world that we're serious about creating a more inclusive and equitable environment," Stephanie said during a meeting with the Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Board. We can't afford to backslide or make half measures. We need to go all in, and we need to do it in a way that sets a new standard for the industry. With Stephanie's guidance, the airline doubled down on its efforts, expanding the scope and scale of its diversity and inclusion initiatives. The company not only increased its investment in employee training and customer engagement programs, but it also began to actively seek out diverse suppliers and partners, and to promote the leadership of underrepresented groups within the organization. The results of these efforts were swift and tangible. Within a matter of months, the airline's customer satisfaction scores began to improve, as passengers from all backgrounds reported feeling more respected and valued. Moreover, the company's workforce became more diverse and inclusive, with a clear pipeline of talent that reflected the rich tapestry of the communities it served. As Stephanie continued to champion the airline's transformation, she also began to emerge as a respected voice within the industry, sharing her insights and experiences with other companies and organizations that were grappling with similar challenges. Her story had become a testament to the power of perseverance, and a shining example of how one person, armed with a strong sense of purpose and an unwavering commitment to change, could make a real and lasting difference. In the months that followed Stephanie's initial confrontation with the airline, the company's efforts to address the issue of racial bias and discrimination began to take shape. Under her guidance and leadership, the Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Board worked tirelessly to implement a comprehensive set of reforms that would transform the way the airline interacted with its passengers. The first major initiative was the rollout of the mandatory unconscious bias training program. Every employee, from the frontline staff to the executive team, was required to participate in the intensive training sessions, which were designed to help them recognize and overcome their own biases. It's not enough to simply tell our employees to be respectful and inclusive, Stephanie explained during one of the board's meetings. We need to give them the tools and the understanding to truly internalize these values and put them into practice every single day. The program was met with some initial resistance, as some employees felt that they were being unfairly singled out. However, Stephanie and the advisory board remained steadfast in their commitment, emphasizing the importance of the training and the long-term benefits it would bring to the company and its customers. As the training program gained momentum, the airline also implemented a new customer feedback system that prioritized addressing incidents of racial bias and discrimination. Passengers were encouraged to report any concerns or issues they encountered, and the company's leadership team was committed to investigating each case and taking swift and decisive action. We want our customers to feel heard and respected, no matter who they are or where they come from, Stephanie said in a statement released to the public. By making it easier for them to share their experiences, we can identify patterns and take the necessary steps to address them. The new feedback system was an immediate success, with hundreds of passengers coming forward to share their stories. Many of them expressed relief and gratitude for the airline's willingness to listen and take action, and several even praised Stephanie's role in driving these changes. Alongside these operational reforms, the Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Board also worked to create a more equitable and inclusive culture within the airline. This included initiatives such as employee resource groups, mentorship programs, and targeted recruitment efforts to attract a more diverse workforce. Diversity and inclusion aren't just buzzwords. They're essential components of a healthy, thriving organization, Stephanie said. By investing in our people and creating an environment where everyone feels valued and respected, we can not only improve our customer experience, but also drive innovation and growth. The airline's efforts did not go unnoticed, and soon, Stephanie's story and the company's transformation became a source of inspiration for industry leaders and the broader public. She was hailed as a trailblazer, a champion of change, and a shining example of what can be achieved when someone with influence and determination steps up to challenge the status quo. As the months turned into years, the airline continued to refine and expand its diversity and inclusion initiatives, with Stephanie playing a crucial role in guiding the company's progress. She remained a steadfast advocate, pushing the leadership team to go further and reach higher, always with the goal of creating a more equitable and inclusive environment for all. This isn't just about one incident or one company, Stephanie said in an interview. It's about transforming an entire industry and sending a clear message that discrimination and bias will not be tolerated. We have a long way to go, but I'm more determined than ever to lead the way. As the years passed, the airline's transformation under Stephanie's guidance and leadership continued to gain momentum, earning widespread recognition and acclaim both within the industry and among the broader public. The company's diversity and inclusion initiatives had become a shining example of what could be achieved when an organization was willing to confront its own biases and shortcomings head-on. The mandatory unconscious bias training program had been expanded to include all new hires, and the customer feedback system had become a crucial tool for identifying and addressing issues of discrimination in real time. Moreover, the airline had made significant strides in diversifying its workforce, with a leadership team that better reflected the rich tapestry of the communities it served. This, in turn, had a ripple effect throughout the organization, fostering a more inclusive and collaborative culture that empowered employees to bring their full selves to work. The changes we've seen over the past few years have been nothing short of transformative, said Derek, the frequent flyer and business leader who had shared his own story of discrimination. Stephanie's willingness to stand up and fight for change has inspired all of us, and it's clear that the airline is reaping the benefits of her efforts. Indeed, the airline's reputation had undergone a striking transformation. Once seen as a bastion of exclusivity and privilege, it had now become a symbol of inclusivity and progress, attracting a new generation of customers who valued diversity and equity as much as they did the quality of the service. Stephanie's story has become a touchstone for our industry, said Amara, the travel influencer. It's a reminder that real change is possible, and that when someone with influence and determination steps up to challenge the status quo, they can make a real and lasting difference. As Stephanie's role within the airline and the industry continued to grow, she found herself increasingly in demand as a speaker and thought leader. She was invited to share her insights at industry conferences and events, where she would often share the stage with other trailblazers and innovators who were working to create a more inclusive and equitable future. The work we've done here is just the beginning, Stephanie would tell her audiences. There's still so much more to be done, not just in the airline industry, but across every sector of our economy. But I'm more determined than ever to keep pushing forward, to keep challenging the status quo, and to keep creating a world where everyone, regardless of their race, gender, or background, can thrive and succeed. Stephanie's unwavering commitment to this cause had not gone unnoticed by her peers and colleagues. She had become a role model and an inspiration to countless individuals, both within the airline and beyond, who saw in her a reflection of their own hopes and aspirations. As the airline continued to reap the benefits of Stephanie's leadership and the transformative changes she had championed, it became clear that her story was not just about one woman's triumph over adversity, but rather a testament to the power of individual action and the profound impact that it can have on entire industries and communities. Stephanie's legacy will be one of courage, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of justice, said Derek, his voice tinged with admiration and respect. She's shown us all that when we stand up for what's right, when we refuse to back down in the face of adversity, we can create a better, more equitable world for everyone. And as Stephanie looked out over the horizon, her gaze fixed on the future, she knew that her work was far from over. But with a heart full of determination and a spirit that refused to be broken, she was more than ready to continue the fight, one step at a time, until the day when true equality and inclusion were the norm, not the exception.